Hey, this is Brian, and that's Zach. Thanks for watching Kies Motorsports. If you like our videos, give us a thumbs up, make sure to subscribe. Check us out at KiesMotorsports.com. In today's video, we are going over to Mishimoto. They needed us for a little video project, so we're gonna head down there, and they're actually filming the video. We're just filming a little vlog for you guys today. So we're gonna bring you behind the scenes at Mishimoto for a sneak peek on a new product from Mishimoto for the G80 M3. Alright, so the reason that we are here today is because we are doing some testing and we're helping these guys make an install video on the new intake that they developed for the G80 M3. However, they do have one, but it's in a million pieces right now, so they asked if they could borrow our car, so we said sure. So they asked us one thing, they said, when you come, can you make sure that the car has the stock intake on it? And we failed. So before they get started with what they need to do, I need to revert back to stock. So I'm the rent-a-tech today at Mishimoto. I'm gonna put it back to stock so that they can do what they need to do. Minutes flat. Alright, so we just got the intake fully installed and it looks amazing thanks to who is the engineer behind the G80 intake for the M3 over here. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the process on how you started and just took the car from its natural form and then developed this to a finished product?
Yeah, of course. So the very first step we do approaching any intake design is we look very carefully at the stock system and see what we can improve upon it, right? So one thing very interesting the stock airbox did, let me grab it real quick. You can see that the two airbox, look at the inlet ID, these have one is smaller, the other one is bigger. And then you look at the back of the airbox, this one also have a secondary air inlet system. These windows have provided you with actual fresh air. Because this airbox is really far away from the turbo compared to your passenger side intakes. So the factory OEM did this design to try to balance out the restriction. So that's one thing that we keep in mind in our design. So if you look at ours, our intake inlet on the driver's side is also significantly bigger than the passenger side. We actually use two different air filters inside. It's always easier from design standpoint to use the same air filter, but because inlet, there's a close to 1 inch difference in inlet diameter size, so we have two separate air filters. Another thing that's very interesting about this vehicle, and we also did, is that we redesigned the turbo inlet on the passenger side. So the passenger side in stock one, let me grab it real quick. You can see it give you the pass of this turbo snout We call it turbo snout. Goes onto the turbo, it comes straight out. If you try to adapt a conical fusel, there's simply not enough room in the engine bay to provide you with a smooth airflow pass. So you almost have to jam the air fusel this way, and all these turns add to the restriction of the system. So what we did is we redesigned the turbo snout inlet. We angled it upward and a little bit towards the headlight. This way we have a very short and smooth pass into the turbo.
I really like how you guys took the time to design that as well,
Yeah.
because I haven't seen anybody else really do it.
Yeah, let me check if I have the prototype here. This is our prototype. We have aluminum casted turbo snout as a final product, but this a nylon SLS prototype. SLS stands for Selective Laser Sintering. This is made out of nylon powder. It can withstand high heat and is also very strong. So we were able to use this plastic part, a prototype, to finish over 1,000-mile testing on our vehicle. So you can see when you line up the turbo inlet, this turbo snout provides you with a bigger inlet and a smoother angle to adapt to your intake tube and conical air fusel. Yep, that's it.
That's great. So you said before earlier that this is with the B58 engine, that there were a lot of similarities, which really helped.
Yeah, it does really help. It is similar, but it's also different. What we were able to reuse is a CNC adapter on the driver's side turbo snout. So on the driver's side turbo snout, this is a black plastic piece that goes into the turbo. We choose not to replace it because it has a PCV heater and a sensor in it.
Yeah, you get those check engine lights when you root it.
Yes, if you
May
either
have been guilty of that one.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. We can choose to replicate the adapter piece so that you can reinstall the heater. But what we find out, we actually did redesign that plastic piece. We have a flow bench over there. I'm sure like you guys did a walkthrough. You were talk about a little bit about it. What we did is we redesigned it, we put on a flow bench, and we are only seeing like 1 to 2% less restriction by replacing it.
Right.
So that's a lot of work for a very tiny amount of restriction reduction.
Right.
That's why we choose not to replace it, because stock one is already adequately sized. With how much room you have around it, redesigning it is not going to gain you a whole lot more. That's why we choose to retain the factory one. That's how we made the decision. Is we designed one, we put it on a flow bench, we validated it with data. 1 to 2% restriction reduction.
Right. No, and another thing we had kind of talked about before is something that was, when I first popped the hood, I was like, oh, there's no mass airflow sensor. And I know that's a dream for you with this kind of stuff, right?
Of course.
It solves a lot of issues.
Yes and no. With mass airflow sensor intakes, you are more likely to see a power gain with like bolt-on intakes. But with these newer intakes, with a map sensor, that make your design a lot easier. But the tuning strategy with this vehicle is like with a stock tune, you will not see a significant power gain out of the bolt-on intake because of like a torque-based tuning system.
Right.
A lot of newer vehicles, so like in overall, it's like a little bit harder now to make power with a bolt-on intake if it's map-based versus if it's mass airflow sensor-based.
Okay. But I'm sure once we put those big turbos on here, this is going to help with the flow a heck of a lot better.
Of course, definitely. We have restriction reduction on both sides. So if you were able to like tune it, like basically adjust the strategy, bigger turbo on it, you will definitely gain a lot more power out of this vehicle for sure.
Oh, that's great. And it looks nice too.
Yes.
That's always has a certain design element, which is nice.
Yeah, aesthetically, what we try to do, this actually comes by design review, we want to provide adequate room for aftermarket strut tower bars. So we have plenty of room for any kind of aftermarket strut tower bar that kind of follow the path of the stock intake. And we also have ample clearance, and it's also a nice aesthetic feature to try to get the top of the airbox angle to match the factory strut tower bar.
Right. No, it looks really great. So speaking of the design, you mind showing us what's on the computer over there?
This is a kind of how our design started. Let me hide this real So what we started is we have a 3D scanner. I'm sure Ricky talked to you guys about. That's our main piece of tool. Vehicle come in, and the first thing we do, we strip it down, and we start scanning. So this is our part, and all the white pieces, this is our 3D scan. Close this real quick. So this gives me the design package that I need to have in order to know if I can make this tube like 3 inches or 4 inches, if I'm very close to a component here. This entire package is where I started the 3D. Once you have the scan finished and processed into SolidWorks, you start to line them up. So this entire 3D scan file is done in 3 layers. We remove the stock intake, we remove the straw tower bar, and we just scan the bare minimum like an empty engine bay. And then we start layer up by installing the stock intake, and then we install our straw tower bar. So it's like drawing layers. Now you have 3 layers of design. As we design it, we can hide and show the components as needed. So yeah, this is like 3D representation of our design.
Now, like from when you get a car in to final design, I know every car is different, but like what's like a rough time frame that it takes to get to that point?
It really depends. Some intakes can, from the car comes in or it's our vehicle, we start designing it to production. Sometimes it can take like 6 months, like half a year. Sometimes even longer if there's like any kind of delay or issues on the supplier, like factory end.
Right.
If everything goes like super smooth, I think the fast one we have done is maybe like 4 months to release.
Okay.
The R&D process usually takes about a month. What we have done in the past is like the first couple of years we started, we used to knock out intakes a week. We used to have a vehicle come in on Monday, and we put on a dyno on Thursday or Friday. So you basically finish your design process within 3 days. That was a very stressful period of time. But we were also doing like more of a sheet metal style intake, like an open air diffuser, sheet metal style intake, and not something as like evolved as this. So now the R&D process is longer, but we are producing a way more complicated and way better product.
Right. No, it shows too. It's amazing too what you can even do just with the software you have.
Oh yeah, software and the 3D
It looks so
scanner.
realistic.
Yes.
It's even got like the grooves from the mold.
Yes, yeah, it does. Yeah, we can also put a render in it. We can give it texture. It's just going to take a while. We can get a rendering effect that looks almost like photo.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And the power of the SolidWorks stock one. You can see how if you retain the stock cast piece turbo snout, but your air fuse is right here, you have to make a very aggressive turn, and that's every single turn, every reduction in cross-sectional area adds to restriction. So that's why we choose to redesign ours so that we can correct this angle. That's our coupler. Let's see if I can hide that real quick. So this is where ours end, this is where stock one ends. You can see how we corrected the angle. And this is the main reason why we choose to replace it. We also were able to save one of those quick disconnect fitting adapters. This is a fairly complicated CNC piece. Because we removed this factory turbo snout, we were able to make it a simplified, just a barbed fitting over a silicon coupler kind of design versus O-ring, clip, and complex machining.
Right.
On the passenger side.
No, it's definitely very complicated.
Yep.
From a design aspect.
This is definitely one of the Supra is also pretty complicated. I would say the Supra airbox by itself, it's only 1 intake versus 2. The Supra airbox is even more complicated because we have to integrate a heat shield.
Right.
I don't know if you saw the stock intake on the Supra. This car
it has that piece of like metal,
on the side of it. That piece of exhaust manifold heat shield, like normally is on the vehicle on the engine, but Supra and that vehicle is bolted to the airbox. We have to retain it. we have either retain it or make our own. So we choose to make our own. So our airbox come with 2 pieces of heat shield on it. That's another process, like, again, not relevant to this vehicle, but we've also validated necessity of heat shield because we run with and without it. And there's like, I think it's like 5 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit of temperature difference with the gauge. So you do need it. Right. Because you don't want to cook your intake air.
Right. All right, we just got back to the studio. Zach and I have to take care of a couple things, but big thanks to everyone at Mishimoto for making today's video possible. I'm super excited to debut their brand new intake. As you saw, there is a ton of R&D that goes into something like an intake from Mishimoto. I really like how they do everything in-house, from the actual design. They do 3D printing, they do all kinds of mock-ups, they make sure that it is the best of the best. They have a flow bench, and really they just overanalyze everything, which I think is super cool, and we're super excited to be able to put this intake to the test. So if you guys are interested in one of these Mishimoto intakes for your car, be sure to see the links in the description. By the time you guys see this video, which is about a month and a half into the future from today, they should be available at least for pre-order, but if you click the link down below, it's going to give you all of the details. Anyway, once again, my name is Brian, that's Zach behind the camera. Thanks for watching Kies Motorsports. If you like our videos, give us a thumbs up, make sure to subscribe, check us out at KiesMotorsports.com, and thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.